Good morning, guys. Welcome to Walking Boxing, August the 6th, 2024, and it is another beautiful day here in the Macedon Ranges. It's a Tuesday, of course. Out with a little mate Neil here, enjoying the sunshine. Still a little bit chilly, but what a beautiful day. Fair bit happening as usual in the boxing world. Probably the main thing I saw this morning was that the Canelo Alvarez-Edgar Berlanga fight has been officially announced. I think we've all known, of course, what's happening. It's they've had the posters and all that out for a week or two now. But I think they had the press conference today. I haven't really had a good chance to see it yet, just a few grabs here and there. But I'll have a look at that when I get home. But I've got to say the card itself looks a little lackluster, if I'm being honest. There's a little dog run past. Hey, buddy, come on. Morning. You see all things along the road here, a little poodle being dragged along, and Neil wants to go say hello. But yeah, the card looks a little underwhelming for me. We've got Erislandy Lara, Danny Garcia. Look, not a bad fight, I suppose. But look, you've got I'm assuming he's probably 42 by now, Erislandy Lara. Of course, coming off the knockout of Michael Zarafa. Didn't really raise much of a sweat in that one, did he? So it's probably going to be nice and fresh anyway. And Danny Garcia was at, what's it been, 2 years since he last fought? Yeah, not the ideal co-main event we're talking about as well. This is not just on the card. This is a co-main event. Caleb Plant against, is it Trevor McCumbee? And Rolly Romero against, I think is it Manuel James, I think his name is. I'm going to have to do some research on both those guys because I don't really know anything about either of them. But look, so we've got Canelo Berlanga, we've got Lara Garcia, Plant versus McCumbee, or Macumba, whatever it is, and Romero versus James. So that is the pay-per-view portion of the card. Well, I suppose considering the event that we just had on the weekend in LA, yes, I think they've got a little bit of work to do, the PBC boys. Look, I don't mind the main event, and let's face it, that's why we go to the fights probably at the end of the day, is to see the main event. I understand that, but sometimes it's good to have just a couple of, or at least one good fight on the undercard to look forward to. So anyway, not actually, having said that, I mean, there were doubts obviously going up against the UFC. The UFC card isn't much better. Would have expected a lot better from them being at the Sphere, the first event there. Who knows, knowing Dana White, he could come out with a blockbuster to add to the card. Who knows, but at this stage, yeah, that event looks pretty underwhelming as well. So look, end of the day, I'm just happy I'm going to be over there. Nothing beats a massive fight in Vegas or a massive name. This is not a massive fight, but Canelo Alvarez, I mean, one of the all-time greats, of course. So I've been to a few Mayweather and Pacquiao fights that maybe weren't exactly Ali Fraser either, but just the event itself is awesome. Anyway, so the other thing I wanted to probably talk about a little bit is tomorrow is the 40th anniversary of the LA Olympics, the boxing, and I read a really cool article yesterday. I can't remember who wrote it, but it was really well written. It was about Jeff Fenech, 40 years to the day that he was ripped off, and I'm not talking about the Azuma Nelson fight. That came 7 years later. I'm talking about the Olympic, I think it was the quarterfinals that he was in, and he lost to Red Sapolsky, I think his name was. And the funny thing is, I remember watching this fight in my lounge room. We had the sleeping bags in the lounge room, and back then, of course, there's no internet, there's no streaming services. There's nothing like that. It's just, I can't remember what station had, or probably, who knows what it was back then. We only had one station apart from the ABC. We had one mainstream station that used to play all the stations put together. It was quite bizarre to think about it. And yeah, we stayed up all night. We used to, and because back then, I mean, you got to think about it. If you got one channel, what sports do you think they're playing pretty much all the time? Swimming, athletics, well, maybe a bit of gymnastics, whatever it might have been, whatever the Aussies were sort of good at the time. So you just never got any boxing, very, very rarely. It might be a fight or two a day if you're lucky. So we were planted right in front of the TV all day and night to try and get a glimpse of the Aussies. And the only way we could watch Jeff Fenech's fight was to pretty much stay up all night, and we set the alarms and in the sleeping bags in the lounge room, and we watched him, and he won 3-2 on the judges' scorecards. But back then, I know it's changed so much over the years, but he won 3-2, and they had a jury. So any fight or any decision that was decided by a 3-2 vote would go to the jury for another look at it. Now, again, that seems quite bizarre these days. You got 5 incompetent people who can't get it right, so they give it to another 5 incompetent people to have a look at, to double check. And the jury, I think for the first time ever, I might be wrong on that, but they actually reversed the decision and gave the decision to Redzep Sapolsky. I think he was might have been Yugoslavia from memory. I mean, he was a good fighter, but Jeff, I thought, like the first sort of round and a half were quite close, but I thought Jeff really come home strong, especially in the last round, and actually had Sapolsky in a little bit of trouble, and it really highlighted or foreshadowed Jeff's pro career, because he was just on Red Sapolsky from start to finish, and was just still going as hard at the end as he was at the start. And Red Sapolsky was really looking to for the bell to end. And the look of devastation on Jeff Fenech's face, I still remember it, even as a 9 or 10-year-old, whatever I was back then. And apparently he jumped on a plane the next day and was gone. And that doesn't surprise me with Jeff. He's no nonsense. Very much wears his heart on his sleeve. And the next day he didn't give a shit about closing ceremonies and partying and all that sort of stuff. He got on a plane and came home. A few other stories connected to that was pretty funny. The team manager was Sol Spatelnik. I know Sol, or knew Sol very, very well. He was from Victoria, who was the main man in Victoria, and was the offsider to Arthur Tunstall for a long time. I won't sort of say my opinions to him on here. I'll keep them sort of private. But apparently there was Sol Spatelnik gave the team instructions that they were not to speak to the media. They were allowed to speak to the media, but they were not allowed to mention the home coaches. They had to just continually refer to the national coach, who was Ed Wishes, who was an American who took control of the team, and they were instructed not to mention the home coaches and only refer to what they're doing in training camp with Ed Wishes. And Jeff Fenech's, like as Jeff is, he's a pretty stubborn sort of guy, loyal type of guy. He said, well, Johnny Lewis has got me this far. I wouldn't be here at the games if it wasn't for him. So I don't really agree with it. I'm going to go home. And glad they didn't send him home, of course, which I'm surprised that Sol Spatelnik didn't say, well, that's it, boy, no one talks back to me and you're going home. But anyway, I think Ed Wishes actually admired Jeff's loyalty and said to Jeff, it's all right, Jeff, you talk about your home coach as much as you want. I admire that, and that's what he did. But to get back at Sol Spatelnik, Jeff decided he would buy a snake from the local pet shop. Now, of course, it would have been non-venomous, you would have think. And he put it in Sol Spatelnik's bed. And in the middle of the night, I'm surprised it took that long, by the way, but Sol Spatelnik was seen running down the hallway yelling, "There's a snake in my bed." And of course, Jeff, probably being a little bit of a prankster, got the last laugh on Sol Spatelnik. They did take the snake back, by the way, the next day, according to Jeff. But he said, "I'm going home after the fight. This is, and I'm going to be world champion." Now, not only did Jeff become world champion, I think he turned pro only a couple of months after getting home, by the way. He did it in 6 fights, 196 days it took him. And that is just unbelievable. Another thing I didn't mention is that Jeff, as an amateur, I'm pretty sure only had like 30 fights. He didn't have a lot of fights. And he's gone over to the Olympics fighting guys who have probably had hundreds of fights. And he was very, very unlucky not to be fighting for gold. Now, just as a side note to that, Redzep Redzeposki went on to lose the final to American Steve McCrory in a close fight. And if you know your boxing, of course, Jeff Fenech stopped Steve McCrory in 1986, so 2 years later, in defence of his IBF bantamweight title. And Steve McCrory, unfortunately, is no longer with us. But this is the sort of guy that Jeff Fenech is. You know, he wanted revenge and he got it. But yeah, he turned pro and had the world title 6 months after turning pro. And again, this would probably only be maybe 3 years after maybe 4 years after he actually started fighting or boxing. Just an amazing achievement. And he did also mention that his good friend Evander Holyfield, now he had heartbreak at the Olympics as well. Of course, he was disqualified against New Zealand's Kevin Barry for apparently or allegedly hitting on the brake. He knocked Kevin Barry out and was disqualified. Kevin Barry couldn't fight either. That was in the semis, I think. Kevin Barry couldn't fight in the final because he was concussed from the knockout. So both fighters were out. And I can't remember who actually won the gold medal, but they obviously got it by a walkover. Evander Holyfield was the first Olympian of that team. And don't forget, this team of the Americans had Pernell Whitaker, Meldrick Taylor, Tyrell Biggs, Mark Breland, and of course Holyfield. And out of all those fighters, Evander Holyfield was the first to win a world title, but he did it in 5 years. 5 years, or 3 years, 4 years, whatever it was. But it was about 2 or 3 times longer than, I think, pretty sure he won it in 87, so it must have been 3 years. I think Jeff said 5, but it was actually 3. And the two have remained pretty good friends, and Jeff said, well, I did it in 6 months, you took 3 years. But just an amazing effort. And it just goes to show, in my opinion, just why Jeff Fenech is the greatest fighter we've produced. The tenacity that this guy has, and the drive and the will, and everything, just to put all that behind him. This is the guy too, remember, that fought most of his fights with broken hands and awful weight cuts, just really bad training conditions, and he did it all through desire, and had a great team behind him, of course, Johnny Lewis, promoter Bill Morty, and it was just the perfect storm for all those concerned. But he's always my favourite fighter growing up, Jeff Fenech, and still is to this day. I still think he's the greatest Australian fighter we've produced. He's had his health scares in the last few years, so looks like he's still doing well. He's 60 years old now, which is really hard to get my head around, but truly is just a true Aussie icon, in my opinion. Anyway, so that's it for today. That's walking boxing. I'm going to get Neil home. He's being a little bit stubborn at the moment and doesn't want to move, so I'll get him home and get him organised. He's just laid down in protest, so I'll get him home and get him fed and get on with the day. So thanks for watching, guys, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow.